Hi, Cap.
Morning, John.
So I was explaining in something of an opening kickoff kind of a sense. Did you hear the story about the firecracker lobbed into the press conference room in Liga MX?
I did not.
So basically, it is as a Chivas Guadalajara midfielder Roberto Alvarado has apologized to journalists. And I imagine that there are times when I'm sure that players would sit there and they'd love to do something like this. I'm going to lob a firecracker into a press conference room and see the journalists scatter. That's the most vert I've seen from that beat writer in years. So Alvarado apologized to journalists after throwing a firecracker that exploded in the media room ahead of Thursday's pre-match news conference. So it's a Derby presser. So I would imagine that there's maybe more than one or two journalists in said press conference room. Roberto Alvarado decides from the neighboring locker room to light a firecracker. Like I said, all this stuff is apparently like logic that's rolling through dude's head. So he goes from having an unlighted firecracker in his possession to a lighted firecracker in his possession. And like I said, I'm trying to walk through this process. And so Alvarado apparently thought that, lighted firecracker. I have two choices. I can keep it here in the locker room, or I can have someone open a door, which just happens to be to the adjoining press conference area, take said lighted firecracker, throw the firecracker into the press conference room, and have the firecracker go off with, journalists there. The press officer and one of the defenders apologized to the media, but the media was like, "Nah, fam, that's not going to work. We need the dude that did it." And so so Alvarado goes in. He comes out of the dressing room, and he claims it was an accident and that he had no intention of hurting anyone. As I sit here and wander through conscious decisions of it was an accident. So you go from unlighted firecracker to lighted firecracker. And lighted firecracker, I've got to do something with this. Door open. Firecracker through door. Closed door. Firecracker go boom. It was an accident. Beat 2, 3, 4. The media were so pissed. No one was injured. But the presser didn't take place because all the media were like, "Nah, we're boycotting this thing. We're out." Have you ever, sir, in this go round of have you ever been with a teammate, either named or unnamed? I don't know if statute of limitations can apply here. Have you ever had a teammate that had that kind of a mischievous trouble streak attached to them where they thought that something would be funny, something like that? Have you ever been with a teammate that had that kind of mischievous trouble streak attached to them? Like I said, you can name names if you want. You don't name names if you don't want to, but you can either just say yes or no and maybe give an incident. I don't know.
I mean, I played with some crazy teammates.
How crazy were they?
Never did anything to the media or anything, but like I had a goalie teammate once, Eastern European guy, and he showed up at one of our teammates' house. They got into it on the field, and he showed up to his house later on in the day with a baseball bat ready to go. Telling him basically like he'd kill his whole family if he ever did anything like that on the field again. And
wow,
yeah, nut job.
Wow.
But I've never seen a firecracker even in a locker room before. I don't even understand why is there even a locker room or a firecracker in the locker room?
It's
craziness.
I don't know. It's like, dude made conscious decision and you carry it back one further step than I did. Literally, firecracker. I think carrying a firecracker into a locker room is a great idea. Firecracker unlighted in locker room. Oh, let's light it. What do we do with lighted firecracker? Oh, there's a door. Oh, by the way, there are media people on the other side of that door. So I just had to ask. But yeah, Alex is like, that's less mischievous and more felonious when a bat is involved instead of a firecracker. I would agree. that there's more that it is more felonious when it's when a baseball bat is involved, or just ask Marcelo Bielsa and Kevin Andrews. Speaking of Bielsa, we talked about Luis Suarez and him saying that the environment with El Loco as they were getting ready for the Copa was less than cordial. When it comes to this, will be my opening point this week. Not that you would have had an El Loco as a coach, but when you talk to your mentees and when you talk to teammates, ex-teammates and everything, when it comes to navigating coaches and those in positions of authority that have different personalities, how do you talk to your mentees about, well, yes, this one's a player's coach, yes, this one's a hard A, that kind of a thing? Do you talk to them about navigating all the different personalities and just understanding that, yes, some folks operate differently than others when it comes to trying to get messages across?
For sure. We just had a blog about it because it's something that's come up repeatedly. So we were like, all right, we need to write something about this. Because, yeah, it's mostly what we're dealing with is how do you deal with a hard-ass coach who his coaching style is to get after you and try and push you that way. But they also tend to be yellers on the field and yell at you when you make a mistake. And just how do you be confident, play freely, and get something out of it when you're playing for a coach like that, especially when you, as an individual, don't really respond well to that type of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we know, there's different ways to motivate people, and some are motivated by that tactic and others are not. And it should be a little bit more curated to the individual based on some things, but we know that that's not happening all the time with coaching. So yeah, it's challenging, and we try and tell them that whether you've got a coach that you agree with how he does things or not, you're hoping that, and until proved otherwise, you assume they have your best interest at heart and they're trying to get the best out of you and the best for the team, and they don't mean to do anything to make you play poorly. It's just their way of coaching. So how do you get the message and separate that from the tone, and use the information to the best of your ability? And sometimes you're not even going to agree with the information, but how do you balance that with what you've learned in the past, but also you want to do what you have to do to stay on the field? So yeah, there's a tough balance for sure. I mean, we had it with Tata. When we started with Tata, especially for the English-speaking group, it was so different than anything we had ever experienced, and on and off the field. And there were times where the way that we were playing, Jeff, myself, Alec in the back before Brad got there, we're looking at each other like, man, this is crazy. Like, we can't play like this. We're so exposed in the back. Like, we have to do a little differently, right? And so you do small little things to balance how the coach wants to play and how you see it out there on the field. And obviously we were in a different position because we're out there performing and we're a little bit more veteran than some of the other players. So yeah, it's challenging though, because there's a whole, just like individual players, there's a whole host of different coaches on different levels, and the way that they institute what they want is so different.
How do you, in a situation like that, how do you and Jeff and Alec and and everybody that's a veteran who's been through this kind of a ringer before, how do you listen? Then how do you implement what might be, crazy just in general from your own observations, and then not let it get to you and kind of tweak it, where it's like you're trying to juggle about 19 different things. It's like you're paying attention to what he's saying, you get it, but then you put your own little twist on it and not make it look like you're being disrespectful, I guess is what I'm saying. It's like you understand where he's going, but it's like, hey, if we do this, then it's just as impactful and not as crazy. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, a little bit for sure. And for us, it was just what can we control a little bit. And so for us, we were just like focused on especially counterattacks and defensive side of things. And so we were like, all right, well, attack wise, we're going to do what we do, and it's fine. But okay, how can we be a little bit more stable defensively than maybe we're being set up for, or how we see things? And it's just to get results, right? You want to win, and you want to play well and do well. And so it's our butts on the line out there if we're giving up 4 goals. So we're gonna do what we have to do to make sure that that's not happening. So yeah, just controlling little things about, hey, telling Leandro not to go up for crosses when the right back's crossing the ball and he's playing left center back, and maybe having the wing back on the other side hang out every now and then, or just adjusting a little bit based off the opponent. But if the coach's tactics start working like they did with Tata, then you get more buy-in, then you get more belief, then you get, okay, I can see how this can work. And it takes a little bit of time, right? But if it's a huge change at the beginning, it's difficult for players that have played one way for a long time to say, oh yeah, let's just go do this. That'll be fine. Versus like, oh shoot, let's see if it's going to be fine.
I was going to say, I don't think shoot was the word that you were using, but nevertheless, it's just I wonder about that adjustment period and trying to find the happy middle ground. It's like we've been around the block, we know what you're saying, but we can also do this, and do this, and because if you're a younger player and you're in a situation like that, you don't want to upset the apple cart. You want to, it's like yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Right at it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it, and then you're in lockstep and everything, because it could affect your playing time. I mean, it's a balance from the younger players that want to listen and learn and implement, and the veterans that listen and learn and implement, but implement with a twist. So the message is still getting out there, and the result is still the same. It might be a little different just because of the exposure and the experience that you guys had out there in the first place.
Totally. And I think that as you become more of a veteran, and even for youth players, as you play with a coach for more often, or you get a little bit more experience, right? There's a way that your coach wants you to play before the game starts. But then when the game starts, and until halftime, there's very little coaching that can change things on the field, right? And so players have to take the initiative to change things if you're getting punched in the face, especially repeatedly, right? You can't just assume, okay, let's just keep doing it and it'll eventually work out. No, it won't, right? You need to adjust. And like, for example, with Greg Berhalter in Columbus, right? He wanted us to play out of the back all the time, every time. But there were certain situations where it was like, okay, hey guys, we're going to step up to midfield and have the goalie kick it as far as he can, and we're going to kick the ball into the other half, and we're going to go play over there for a few minutes and chill out, and then maybe we'll get back to what we're doing here. But we need to reset. And same thing under Tata. Like, yeah, I know that we want to play out of the back, but you know what? I'm going to kick this ball long for a little bit because I'm sick of us playing in our half of the field, and like little things like that where it's like, you're not disregarding completely the game plan, but you're adapting because you see things on the field and you are in it.
I need a breather. I need a blow. I'm going to kick this long for a minute. It's just, I'm going to go that way, and I'm going to catch my breath for a second. Generationally, and this is something that you've been kind of alluding to here in our conversation this morning, are the younger players today, is their BS meter lower than it was when we were learning the game? Do they sit there and if somebody's yelling at me these days, I'm going to be like, yeah, okay, whatever, great. You can yell at me all day long. I either feel like I know what's going on. I know what you're saying. You don't have to yell at me, these kinds of things. How different is the intake with your mentees than it would be with, say, folks that are your age or slightly younger than you? Is the intake different? Is the BS meter less? Is the BS meter higher or lower? What about mentees these days?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's and like everything, it depends on the personality of the player. But it's I think in general, younger players still listen to their coaches. The coaches have a huge influence, and hopefully that's a good thing. There are definitely some individuals who, regardless of the coach, are going to go out there and do their own thing. But I think that for the most part, they are listening to their coach and trying to implement what they from the sideline are saying. And that's why it can be challenging, right? Especially if that coach is a yeller and yelling at you about mistakes, because then you get out there and you're afraid to make mistakes because you don't want to get yelled at.
Right.
And so that's a tough way to play. And you'd think that coaches would see that and understand that. But for some reason, they all don't.
Well, I mean, I would think that the ego of that coach plays into this too. It's like, well, I have this dossier of success in my brain, and I've won this trophy. I've won this Miss Congeniality trophy for finishing third in our division. 18 years ago, and so obviously what I do works. And I would think that ego plays into it from the ego of the superior of the individual in power. I was about to say superior. Sometimes they're not, but the coach on the sideline, the administrator on the sideline, because they have this history of success. It's like, well, yes, obviously it works. And then you'll have folks these days who might sit there and go, really? That works? No, it's just, there are times I would think that adults, and we've had this talk too, where adults sometimes just kind of need to dial it back and listen more instead of sitting there and just yelling and ranting and raving and poking fingers and going, this is the way, and let it be a two-way street with some, just at least listening, even if the feedback isn't taken in, at least just take the effort to listen to what's coming back at you instead of just saying my way or the highway, because that doesn't work all the time.
Rarely. Rarely does it work. No, for sure. I mean,
fine, it's my way or you're not playing. But we get that. I mean, you get managers who are this way in different sports. It's like, you're going to do it my way or you ain't playing. And then, then you sit, and it's just it. I would think that it would drive folks crazy where you see a better pathway, and that position, an individual in a position of power doesn't. And it affects everything it affects everything downstream, and it doesn't do anything that's better.
And again, I don't think most of these coaches are coming from a place of trying to belittle kids or be mean or anything, right? They're just usually what I see is they're so competitive, and they've got the juices flowing, and they can't help themselves. So they need to figure out how they can channel their aggression and hype for the game into a better way. But yeah, no, I mean, anytime the best leaders are good listeners, for sure. And it goes into parenting and leadership and coaching and everything, right? And it's one thing to listen and then do what the kid wants, but it's another thing, to just get their respect a little bit. Yeah, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, but here's why I think differently, here's why I see it differently. And I think if coaches explain that stuff sometimes, it goes a little bit longer of a way. Okay, I understand now why we're doing something, rather than this is just what we're doing.
Hey, Dad, I think I should take the car out this weekend.
Yeah.
And yes, I hear you. I understand your point of view. The answer is still no.
Exactly.
About another 10 minutes or so with Michael Parkhurst, our mogul in training at MF Parkhurst on the 280 character app and Beyond Goals Mentoring, where we go completely and totally sideways, because there'll be an entry point every single time that you and Greg come out with the Friday free kick, and then it literally is like bumper cars every single time that you're on. And I will tell you each and every time that you come on, for putting up with all of these right turns and all of this chaos that goes through my brain and comes out the other side. I cannot thank you and Greg enough for doing this kind of stuff. Rhode Island FC question from Bart Keeler. What are the chances of Rhode Island FC bidding to host a national team match after Tidewater Landing is complete? RIFC is mentioned in the next episode of the Soccer for US podcast.
Nice. Unfortunately, very low.
What?
Well, the men don't play on turf, and I don't think the women play on turf. I don't know that for sure, but I would highly doubt they do. And I don't think that our stadium size, it's a 10,500 seat stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the cost to bring in the grass over the turf and bring a team in and that type of stuff, it would make sense for us. So unfortunately, probably pretty low. But we are definitely looking at other opportunities. We're going to fill that stadium as much as we can with different events and sports and opportunities and teams. So there'll be a lot going on other than Rhode Island FC. Rhode Island FC obviously is number one, but there will be a lot. I don't think that the national team though would take us.
Well, Bart's like, yeah, I'll buy a square
I
side.
appreciate it, Bart.
Well, then, don't let me ask you this, and this might be crossing the streams and drawing the ire of some nationalist folks. But do you have Jesse Marsh's phone number in your Rolodex?
I used to,
because going from say Toronto and the sponsored stewardship that the tenured professorship that Jesse Marsh has now with that national team to the north of us.
mm-hmm.
It's not. I mean, shoot, in COVID, Toronto FC played in Hartford or at Pratt and Whitney. So playing in Connecticut is not something completely and totally foreign to Toronto FC. So maybe if you talk to the folks at the Maple Leaf, hey, Jesse, you want to have a friendly against Azerbaijan at Tidewater Landing? Something like that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's true.
And we all did get our recent email to purchase season tickets for Tidewater Landing. By the way, that has made its way down here to the south. Since we're here, what's the latest on Tidewater Landing? Where are things?
Coming along well. We are definitely happy that the port is back up and running, and so that will not delay anything. But we've got seats in the stadium. Not all of them yet, but we do have seats in the stadium, so that's nice. And I think that the email campaign or the season ticket campaign has started, and they've got this cool virtual thing where you can kind of see each section and what the stadium looks like or what it will look like and what your seat, the view and all that stuff. So that's exciting. We're definitely obviously gearing up for 25 while we're keeping a close eye on 24 because we've got some playoff aspirations here.
Why, yes, you do. And considering where things currently stand, where the draws have turned into wins, and that reminds me, I still need to catch up with Thomas in media relations, or perhaps the mogul in training, and figure out how to get Kano on the show. Right now, you're a part of the chaos in the second chase group in the Eastern Conference, where it's like Lou City and then everybody else, and then Charleston is right now in second, 11 points to the chase group. Detroit City at 48, Tampa Bay at 46, Indy 11, 12 wins, and a match in hand on somebody called Rhode Island FC, both at 43 points. You've won 3 of your last 5, and you have a point on Legion, and you've got 5 on Loudoun. You have 6 below the playoff bar with Hartford Athletic, and 9th place in 37 points. So there is a little bit of space right now for Rhode Island FC in the postseason, but it would be an opening round matchup, if I'm not mistaken, against Le Rouge at Keyworth, and that's always a fun place to play because they're right on top of you and they throw things at you and there's smoke bombs and all these kinds of things. Maybe it's not a lighted firecracker, mind you, and it's also outdoors, but it is a rough place to play.
It would. The Parkhurst family wouldn't mind it because it's a nice little drive, but it wouldn't be the best venue for us to play. You're right. It is tough to play there. Some of these turf fields aren't in the best condition, and they make it challenging, right? And Detroit's one of those, and Pittsburgh's one of them. Yes. But that's what makes it unique, and that's what makes it fun and challenging. So we'll see. But we've got 4 games left. I think if we get 3 out of 4 wins, we could sneak into the top 4. Ooh. But if we go 2-2, I think that we will finish in the top 6.
And that would be very, very cool for our resident part of the ownership group. And besides, hey, we know a playoff owner. Hey, we got him on speed dial. We can have him come on a Friday and talk about things. When it comes to the pressure of accomplishment, since we're talking playoffs, when it comes to your mentees and the pressure that's attached to doing well, and it's almost like the scene in Breakfast Club, when they're in the library and Emilio Estevez's character Andrew is talking about all the pressure from the parents and everything. When it comes to pressure and succeeding and trying to do your best, what kind of feedback do you get from mentees about external pressure, where they're just trying to do as best they can, enjoy what's going on, and what happens, and if they succeed and continue to succeed more over time, that's great. But do they talk about external pressures with you and Greg a lot, and about how difficult it may or may not be to handle these kinds of things?
Yeah, they do. And I think a lot of it is when they're going through the college recruitment process, and they know that there's scouts at games, or if they're players that want to get to a new team and they know that sometimes they're being watched. So, it's usually goes along with aspirations to get to the next level, to take that next jump. That would be the biggest pressure induced, for sure, that we've come across with our mentees. And then there's other players that just feel pressure to play well because those players usually don't say why, but it's usually because they don't want to let the team down, they don't want to let coach down, they don't want to let mom and dad down,
right.
And they just want to win, because they don't, not because they don't see the value of losing, but nobody wants to lose.
Yeah. Before you get out of here, what's going on with Beyond Goals Mentoring these days?
We've had 2 really crazy busy months, so it's been great. It's been really, really good, and we're trying to get more content up there on the website with blogs and different topics that people come to us just to try to spread more information. One of the things I'm working on, John, is a book list for players, but also coaches / parents. So putting one together, because a couple of people have asked me about that. So I was like, it's time for me to do some more work here.
Do you do the blogging? I mean, do you formulate these kinds of thoughts, or do you have guest bloggers or things like that? Do you do some of the blogging yourself?
We do. Yeah, a lot of the stuff Greg and I come up with ourselves. We do have a marketing group that we've just recently started working with. They help us out with some of the blogs and some of the ideas. And then Greg and I will write down, usually we'll write down either the whole blog, or we'll write down like our main ideas, and they'll spruce it up from there.
Because I was going to say, when it comes to finding your voice, when it comes to writing, how are you in finding your voice?
Good. I've always enjoyed writing. I actually, very early in my career, I did some guest writing for ESPN, but that was a long time ago. But I've always enjoyed writing.
Okay. Then one more question before you get out of here, other than getting ready for Tampa Bay at Byrne this weekend. Question from Four Card: do Shield winners get championship rings?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of, but I never did win the Shield, so I don't know for sure, but I don't think so.
I mean, that might have to do with the comment that was put on your social media recently about stars on jerseys and winning shields and things like that.
It's always a fun conversation.
Yeah, so the Captain America shield, that means so much when it comes to the end of the season and who wins a trophy. Cap, as always, thanks for dropping by. It's great to pick your brain. It's great to find out what's going on in all these different aspects of your life. And next time you drop in, it'll be postseason time. We'll talk about postseasons, not making postseasons, what to do, how to improve, all those kinds of things. And we'll just keep right on rocking and rolling. Love what you and Greg are doing, and thanks for putting up with my questions on a weekly basis.
Thanks for having me, John. Have a great weekend.
You too. That's some guy named Michael Parkhurst.